Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to be talking about how to make leather on a miniature look kind of worn and distressed and just used and battle worn. This is the kind of thing that's ideal for things like pouches, holsters, that kind of thing, for maybe an old wizardly tome, or one of the techniques we're going to use in this video is a technique called volumetric highlighting. Now that sounds really posh and kind of arty, but honestly, it kind of isn't. All it means is that you take a shape and you use your highlights, your hues, your brush strokes, essentially, to enhance the shape of it. Give you a rough idea. If I was to give you a piece of paper and a pencil and say, draw a sphere, then you would draw a circle and you'd color in one side of it towards the bottom in a darker shade to show the effect of light. A little bit like I've done here in Photoshop. It's a really, really simple thing that we all kind of do innately with a pencil or a pen, but it's not always something that we think of to do with a paintbrush. And I don't know why we don't think like that, but it's one of those things that we sort of don't. So let's get to it then. The first thing we're going to do is that volumetric color that I talked to you about. Now, when we are using the paint on this miniature, all we're going to do is take some black and take some white. I'm going to work all the way through with that. So start off with a black base coat. Mix a little bit of white into your paint, a tiny, tiny amount to get a dark grey, and start working those volumes in. As you can see here, we're starting off at the top of each of the kind of creases here and helping to sort of bring out the shape, the volume of the areas there, to give us that nice 3D effect. Keep adding white in until you get to a light grey, and then start working in some scratches. Now you want to keep your paint nice and thin for this, and then the brush with a very nice sharp tip to it. A lot of brush control is all about having the right thickness, the right viscosity to your paint. You want paint that will easily be picked up by the brush, but will not distend the brush tip. You also don't want too much paint on your brush. Keep doing that until you've got a good amount of initial scratches, and add in some more white paint, and then keep working with those. It's best to work in straight lines here, but try and avoid too many like parallel surfaces, parallel scratches. Try to do any that are exactly perpendicular, it's like a cross 90 degrees to each other, because it just looks a little bit weird. Also, don't forget to do your edge highlighting with this step as well. It makes sense that your edge highlights and the weathering have pretty much the same hue or value. Remember, you can do this with any color. We're just happening to doing it with a black to gray bit of leather here. If you're using browns, then work up from a dark brown using like an ochre or something like that. Maybe adding a little bit of yellow just to help sort of tint it a little bit towards that for some of your more sort of delicate scratches. But otherwise, keep building up the scratches until you're happy that you've got a fairly weathered sort of set of damage. The next step is to start adding some burring to the corners. So pick a corner and do lots of scratches towards that corner, always going in that direction. Remember to do the undersides of things as well. And what this is going to do is look like the corner, which may have been banged on stuff more frequently than the surface. It might be bent, it might be flexed. You're starting to lose some of the surface that leather has. And you're getting that kind of old, worn, potentially well-loved kind of feel. I think most of us have either got or seen a leather jacket that's had shoulders or elbows or something a little bit like this. You can use those and pictures of those for great reference material when you're doing a technique exactly like this. Keep adding those in and keep adding in white until you get to a nice bright, almost pure white. You don't want to go too pure white, it will be too light. And then keep adding in a little bit of that burring in the center of your highlights there. And then also, the next thing you want to do is start adding in some surface, like divots, some little dents, essentially. So take that same bright color and just dot a couple of little areas on your leather, maybe in line with some scratches like I'm doing here, until you've got a nice set of weathering. Now this looks very, very bright. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our original color, which in this case is black. We're going to make a glaze out of that by just thinning it with water. And I'm going to put a couple of passes of that over the surface. And that's just after one pass, it starts to emphasize our shadows. And it starts to just knock away some of the brightness of the white weathering that we've done here. Now, again, if you're using brown, use brown. If you're using like a red leather or a blue leather, then again, use your base coat. I put on a very thin glaze. That was after one coat. You see just after it's dry, we've got a nice dark grey in certain places. We want to take that one step further and we'll apply another glaze directly over the top of it. We're using this to soften the impact that the weathering that we've put on the miniature has had. And we just bring it back to something that is dark, so it looks a little bit more tactical, but now has all of that modulation from the wear and tear in it. It's a lot easier to do it this way and glaze it back than it is to try and use tiny increments of a highlight into your mix to get the same effect. If you're having any problems with glazing, we've got a great video about that on Patreon. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.